give me some of your liberal credentials, because I want people to know that you're a lefty. Because we're going to talk shit about the left, so I want people to know you're an actual lefty.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm from, in Britain, in Europe, you wouldn't call me a liberal, you would call me a socialist. I'm from the socialist left, which, for whatever its problems, and they are manifest and manifold, and presumably covered at great length in America, used to believe in things like secularism, in anti-fascism, in feminism to an extent, in being a part of the Party of Progress. And it used to have some idea of what to do with the world. And I gradually realised, looking around me, that this was no longer the case. That if you want to put it in sort of really rather rubbish terms, really, that I didn't leave the left left me. That's not really true. But there was no longer a universal left-wing message. If you were to get a time machine and go into the future, say 50 years into the future, there are bound to be all kinds of ideas that are accepted that are just on the fringes of American society at the moment. That, all your great pandandrums in the media, Time magazine, New York Times, barely even think about, will be the common sense of their age. Now, that applies to bad ideas as well as good ideas. A really bad idea started on the far left. I would even say it wasn't even a left wing at all. After the collapse of communism, after the end of socialism. Remember, socialism defines what it means to be a left-winger for a good 100 years, from the 1880s through to the 1980s. Then that all goes. Then suddenly there are all these people, Noam Chomsky is a classic example to me, who have that same spirit but no longer have an ideology they can believe in. And so what do? They start just saying, look, anyone who is against the West can't be all bad. Anyone who is against the West, it has to be the West's fault. We are the root cause, to use a phrase that's been repeated to death. And then you suddenly find people who call themselves radicals or progressives or socialists or even feminists going along with movements which are anti-progressive, anti-socialist, anti-radical, anti-women, anti-gay, anti-Semitic, anti-everything, anti-liberal in the classic sense. Actually, movements that have stepped out of a liberal nightmare, if you look at their effects. But because they're anti-West, that's all that matters. It's because there's no longer a positive programme for being left-wing. They just seize on anybody who is against America, against, to use their rather contentious language, we can have an argument about if we want later, against imperialism. And that just starts on the extremes. Like good ideas start on fringes, and it comes into the mainstream. But here's why I thought Chomsky was worth devoting a chapter to, is this. What kind of, you are a young radical on the American campus and you get your Chomsky, you read all his books and you think, well, what kind of society are you aiming for? There is no social vision. There's nothing that the progressives and socialists who run through American history from the 1880s would recognise. They'll just say, well, this is all just saying America's shit, if you forgive me. America's shit. America would probably have never have happened. The Pilgrim Fathers would probably have turned around at Plymouth Rock and gone back to England. The whole thing is a disaster. Everything it does is wrong. Everything is a lie. And you think, well, that's a ridiculous world vision. But funnily enough, here's the thing. It's really easy to buy into.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to commit to anything. The regressive left, which I really like that phrase. Well, let's stick with the regressive left.
Yeah.
The Chomskyan left, the post-socialist left. On the one hand, it has very, very little to say positive. On the other hand, that's kind of easy for everyone to sign up to. You just have to think that Washington's a pile of shit. Well, Washington D.C. is a pile of shit. Well, that's easy enough.
Yeah.
That the State Department doesn't know what it's doing. Yeah, fine. The CIA is wicked. And so instead of having a left wing you had to make really positive commitments for, 40 years ago I could have come on your program and said, I'm a socialist, right? I'm a socialist. And your audience might have said, oh, right, Nick Cohen, he's a socialist. That sounds good. We'll go along with him. He says, and I say, I want massively high taxes, or I want to nationalise this and that. And people who would have been agreeing would say, well, back off and say, hell, I don't want anything to do with this. This guy's threatening my living standards. Now you just have to say that everything you read is a lie, your government's evil, and so suddenly that's actually because you're making so few positive policy commitments as Chomsky does. It's suddenly very easy to go along with him. You know, I go into the homes of people here in London, which is a very expensive city. I go into homes of the richest people I know, and there are books by Noam Chomsky on their shelves. And that's because, funnily enough, for all the supposed radicalism, that kind of left wing without a positive program, with just the critique, is no threat to them. It's no threat to the wealthy. It's no threat to the powerful. It's no threat to the bankers on Wall Street. You know, it's something lots of people, when they're quite justifiably often pissed off with their government, or because, you know, they've got a conspiracy theory mind, or because they want to look trendy, everyone can sign up to that. Mm-hmm. A genuine left-wing program is hard. A genuine left-wing program makes friends and enemies. But this kind of pseudo-left, this regressive left, it's terribly easy to believe in. Too easy, I think, for any successful political movement.
You know, it's interesting because I was really embedded in it for a couple of years, and I guess I hadn't pieced this all together, what you're talking about right now. But part of my frustration was that we never talked about solutions. We always could talk about problems, right? It was always, you know, the American industrial complex and bombing and race and whatever, but there were never solutions. So that does get to what you're saying, that it's sort of...
You see, because as soon as you offer a solution, you're going to piss some people off.
Yeah.
Because a solution means, and you have to make a commitment. And as soon as you make a commitment, then people can say, well, look, Dave Rubin believes in this. Well, this is wrong. You know, it's very easy to just say it's all a conspiracy. It's all shit.
Yeah.
That way you don't expose yourself. You're not making a positive program and sticking your neck out there and waiting to see who shoots you down. One of the great reasons for, I would say, the liberal difficulty in understanding radical Islam is there's a very good liberal impulse that assumes the world is rational. You know, that assumes that if there is this terrible terroristic movement that would blow up the Twin Towers, that would, you know, we knew if they had chemical weapons or nuclear weapons they could use against civilians, they would. There must be a root cause for it. You know, there must be some rational explanation that we can satisfy, that we can appropriate these evil gods. They can't just be that angry against stuff. Is not partly our fault.
Yeah, I saw a lot of that actually right after the Paris attacks, because I saw immediately my friends on the left saying American foreign policy, even though 2 days later, you know, Boko Haram killed 140 people, and obviously that has nothing to do with American foreign policy. But there's this rationalization, even though at the same time, the people who did the Paris attacks were saying this is for religious purposes.
Yeah, but your friends on the left just ought to go and read the history of Nazism, the history of communism. Yes, there are rational reasons that you can blame. You know, you could say if bombs go off at the Charlie Hebdo office in Paris, your friends on the left say, oh, it's their fault. They shouldn't have put cartoons of Mohammed. Yeah. People are slaughtered at a Jewish supermarket in Paris, the hyper-cash supermarket. Oh, it's their fault because of Israel. Because Israel's occupying the West Bank. So, okay, you kill the satirists, that's okay. You kill the Jews, that's okay. People are slaughtered at a football stadium, the Stade de Paris. People are slaughtered at a rock concert. People are slaughtered at a Cambodian restaurant on the Parisian Boulevard. Well, that's kind of their fault because, well, we're not quite sure. American foreign policy, maybe French foreign policy. Now, these are sort of rational explanations, and there's a bit of truth in them. The problem is, every step you take seems rational and liberal, but every step you take takes you away from rationality and liberalism. And you end up like the very murderers you're trying to explain, because you accept their whole ideology, but you don't understand it. You don't understand that they are not people who are sitting there saying, well, we've got a rational grievance, like someone about to file a claim at a county court. Right. They have a utopian totalitarian ideology. You know, and having lived through the 20th century, or a last bit of the 20th century, when utopian ideologies kill millions of people, we still don't understand that someone like Islamic State says, we think we can create heaven on earth. We think we can create a caliphate that will govern the whole earth. And this will be paradise. And to do that, what's it matter if 1 million, 2 million, 10 million people are killed? They don't, they think they're explained, they don't understand anything.